This is a sugarcane farm based on my new concept of tethered flying machines. And I'd like to show you how to build it. If you want a description of how the harvesting mechanism works, there'll be an iCard and a link in the description where I go through how this mechanism actually works. In this video, I'm just going to focus on how to build an efficient sugarcane farm based on that mechanism. And the advantage of this farm over more traditional flying machine farms is that it doesn't require babysitting, it doesn't require manual activation, it does not break just because you happen to leave the area at the wrong moment. This thing always works. Let's start with the rail platform. The part where the sugarcane grows is 12 blocks long. You can make it less than that, but that would be pointless. It's better to just always keep it at 12 blocks wide and adjust the length of the farm in the other direction. 6 blocks in, you probably want to have something to power your rails, so we're just gonna add those blocks there. And then just continue building out this platform. I'm gonna keep this example build relatively small so we don't waste time. Now you want these redstone blocks so that every rail that's gonna be on top of them, because there will be rails on top of them, is at the maximum of 8 blocks away from a redstone block. That way they will always get powered. So between this and if we need to place the next redstone blocks, you can easily have 15 blocks, but at the end of the platform, it can be at maximum of 8. And we're just gonna make this long. Now cover the entire platform with powered rails. And at the end, we need to cap this with some solid blocks so that the mine carts turn around. Now the next part are the hoppers that are going to be picking up the loot. Just temporarily place a hopper here and add hoppers like this. They could be pointing in the other direction if you want the loot system on this side. For this small farm, it doesn't really matter where the hoppers are pointing. Now we need another row of blocks here. And we will be making a magic rail configuration. So you want to build up one layer of blocks here. Now place the rails like this. Oops. And now we can remove the rails here because we only use them to angle these rails up. And we need solid blocks here so that the mine carts turn around. And now we want to place redstone torches here. And in front of every torch, a fence gate. Put down some redstone dust on top of these blocks here. And this will be used to close the fence gates. Now we can already place the minecarts with hoppers here. And if we depower the blocks, the minecarts will roll around. And if we power them, they will come to a stop. We will just keep this temporarily so we're not annoyed by the minecarts running around all the time. Next up is the dirt. Leave a 2-block gap in front of the fence gate, so not here, but start here. And cover the rest of the rails with dirt. Next we'll be building a wall around the dirt, and it's more than just decorative, so you kinda need it. Just go with it. Just a very short explanation for how sugarcane grows. We can't plant sugarcane on this because it's not next to water. We have to have water for sugarcane to grow. Now I can plant sugarcane next to it orthogonally, but not diagonally. Diagonally is not enough. So some clever people have figured out a pattern of water that is the most efficient for how much space you're using versus how much water sources you need. The pattern we're going for is going to look like this. We're going to start in this corner, just arbitrarily. Remove this dirt block, place a stair, waterlog it. Now count. 1, 2, 3, 4. On the fifth block, replace this with stair, waterlog it. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the fifth one, stair, waterlog it. Now we move one row down. 1, 2, this one, stair, waterlog, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, stair, waterlog. 1, 2, 3, 4, nothing there, so we continue here. 1, 2, this one, waterlog. Now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this one, waterlog. But in this direction, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this one, and you continue using this pattern to cover the entire area. And after you place the pattern like this, you might have noticed that sometimes when you were counting, you ended up on this wall here. And that's why it exists. For example, here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this actually needs to be a water source as well. And we can also see this in a different way. I can now plant sugarcane here, but this block, for example, I can't. Sugarcane, sugarcane, so we can just plant sugarcane all around the edges just to see which blocks do not have a water source next to them. And we can see it's this one, so we just poke it out and waterlog it. This one, and waterlog it. This one, and so on. Now that we have all the necessary water sources, we can just add the sugarcane everywhere to this farm, because it might just as well grow while we're building the rest of it, so that we have the first harvest to test. Next step is building up the wall, and I definitely recommend you to build the lowest level of the wall with good light sources like shroom lights, sea lanterns, or glowstone, because mobs can spawn inside sugarcane. And by placing lights at the lowest block of the wall here on every row, we ensure that the light level, even in the middle, is sufficiently high, and this might be important. For the walls here, at least some of the blocks will need to be leaves because there will be a flying machine flying here, so just for consistency I like to build the entire thing out of leaves. And the same thing goes for the wall on this side. This side, just use glass or whatever you like. It doesn't really matter. But leave this side alone, because here we will be building the flying machine and its tether. And a good height for this wall is 4 blocks. And by the way, the 2 rows of leaves here should actually be out here. And if you really want to save on leaves because you don't want to collect them, please wait to see how the final form of this will look, because parts of the flying machine will destroy some of these leaves. That's on purpose. Next, we'll be building the main mechanism. Add 2 more light blocks here. build up 1, 2 up, and 1 out. This block stays. These were just temporary, we removed them, and now we're placing observers pointing up. The last observer should be 1 block before the last block of sugarcane. Here and on top of every observer we put a repeater on 2 ticks. And under every observer we place a solid block. And now on the light block in front of every observer we just put a repeater like this. It should be just 1 tick, don't change it. Next we'll be building the clock. Build up a structure like this. Remove these 2 blocks, and you probably don't want these blocks either. I think it looks prettier when they're not there. Repeater here, 2 ticks. Repeater here, 2 ticks. Repeater here, 1 tick. Repeater here, 1 tick. Now place a temporary block here, temporary block here, put a slime block here, remove the temporary blocks. Temporary block, remove the temporary block. Sticky piston, remove that temporary block. Couple more temporary blocks. Observer pointing up, and remove that one. Now we can add a mechanism just to manually enable the farm so that we can test it. Temporary block and note block. Remove the temporary block and observer looking at the note block. As you can see, that already turned on the mechanism, and we can see that the repeaters are blinking. If you click the note block, the machine turns off. We can now build up the harvesting arm. You can build this anywhere along the line of repeaters, it doesn't matter where. I'll just pick a spot like here. Place a slime block, a sticky piston, a slime block in front of that sticky piston, and a sticky piston here. Now build out the slime blocks like this, and the last one should be glass or any other block you fancy. The machine now should work. Let's test it. And as I mentioned earlier, it will punch a hole in the leaves, which is exactly what we want. Let's stop the machine. Now we're going to add the mechanism that stops this machine automatically. Add a solid block under this piston, and add an observer looking this way here. You can now turn on the machine. And as you can see, the observer blinks for every step the machine takes. And that will power this piston through this block, turning off the mechanism. And as you can see, this column of slime is parking right above this row of leaves and not above the sugarcane, which is exactly what we want. And this is the way the back wall of the leaves is gonna look like. Now we need a mechanism to send out the minecarts after a harvest. Place a block here, another block like this, a repeater here, put it on more than 1 tick, 4 ticks is perfectly fine. Place a block under here, another block here. We can now remove this torch and place it here instead. And place some redstone like this. What should happen is that when the machine is turning off the clock, that will also let the minecarts out. And during that test, we could see that I was lazy and didn't build up this wall entirely. So let's finish that. Like I mentioned earlier, 4 blocks is the safest option. These don't have to all be leaves, but the part that gets touched by the slime blocks, so from here to here, that needs to be leaves. And it's also a good idea to have the whole thing at the same height all around. Now this part here is a little bit awkward because some of the sugarcane will get stuck on these repeaters and there's not much we can do about it. We can just mitigate the problem. So add some glass to this corner and cover this with glass or whatever you want. Any block works. You could use lights, you could use leaves, whatever you fancy, as long as something is there so when the sugarcane flies in this direction, it's more likely to bounce off this than land on the repeaters, but some of it will always land on the repeaters and there's not much we can do about it. The losses from this are minimal, but they do exist. And now all that's left is some kind of clock that will let this farm run once in a while. I prefer to just run it twice a day, once at sunset and once at sunrise, and that one just enabled because it is sunrise, so I was too slow. But what we do is add these 3 blocks here, put a daylight sensor here, a repeater pointing away from the daylight sensor, and an observer looking at the repeater. And that will let the farm run once in the morning and once in the evening, and that is perfectly sufficient. Now, as you may notice, this farm that I built up here has 2 different farms on both sides, and it should be pretty obvious how to add a farm on this side. You just build out the lights here, the repeaters here, an exact mirror copy of the flying machine, put dirt or whatever you want here, the same kind of rail system, the same kind of unloading system. And if you want to extend it in this direction, you can add pretty much as you want. This loot system is perfectly sufficient for handling up to 400, maybe even 410 rows of sugarcane, and that is more than most servers can load, so you will not build it that long anyway. It generates 22 sugarcane per row per hour on average, because it's slightly different how many water sources there are on each row, but on average is about 22 sugarcane. On the other hand, as you can see here, I also have a bamboo farm here. And the only difference with the bamboo is that it needs higher walls because, of course, the bamboo grows taller, so we don't want it to fall outside. And these walls are even a little bit too low, but I'm sure you can experiment and get the height you need. It also doesn't have the water sources. You don't need to worry about that. Just plant the bamboo normally. And another limitation with the bamboo farm is that bamboo grows much faster and drops many more items. So if you want to attach a bamboo farm to this, you will have to change the loot system after about 45 rows. At 45 rows of bamboo, we will be generating 9,000 bamboo per hour, and that is the maximum that a line of hoppers like this can handle. So you would probably have to split it somehow or do something intelligent. But if you have a need for that large amount of bamboo for something, I'm sure you're smart enough to figure out how to improve this loot system. This is very rudimentary, but is perfectly sufficient for a medium scale farm. For sugarcane, you will never need to upgrade this loot system unless you have some crazy server that will allow you to build this 1,000 blocks long, and then you might run into an issue that it takes more than 10 minutes for the minecarts to go the whole way back and forth, or the minecarts get full before they have finished an entire round trip. And, well, like I said for the bamboo, if you have that scale of a problem, then I'm sure you can also figure out how to change the loot system to something much smarter than this. That should be it. If you have any questions, ask them in the comments and I'll answer anything I understand. Thanks for watching and happy sugarcaning!